Back in 1992, the Mighty Ducks wasn't just about hockey. It was about second chances, underdogs, and finding family where you least expected it. Those faces became part of our childhood. But that was only on screen. Off screen, fame faded, marriages broke, and lives took turns no one saw coming. Join us as we uncover who they really were and honor the legacy they left behind. Emilio Estevez as Gordon Bombay. Emilio Estevez was born on May 12, 1962 in New York City and grew up in Malibu, California. At 30 years old, he played Gordon Bombay, the disgraced lawyer forced into coaching a youth hockey team in The Mighty Ducks, 1992. The character gave the film emotional weight, turning a children's sports story into one about regret and second chances. Bombay wasn't just leading the Ducks, he carried the soul of the franchise. That emotional restraint mirrored Emilio's own upbringing. Growing up as the son of Martin Sheen and the brother of Charlie Sheen meant living under constant comparison rather than comfort. Seeing his father battle alcoholism and instability created quiet tension at home, pushing Emilio to seek independence early. As he rose through films like The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, he deliberately kept the Estevez name, a choice that made every career step feel earned rather than inherited. That same independence complicated his personal life. Emilio married model Carrie Sally in the mid-1980s and had 2 children, but the marriage ended as career pressures intensified. Later relationships with Demi Moore and Paula Abdul followed similar patterns: strong beginnings, followed by distance and separation. Over time, work consistently took precedence, leaving emotional stability just out of reach. Professionally, setbacks arrived quietly rather than explosively. Several projects underperformed, and the financial strain of directing Bobby, 2006, hit him hard, both economically and emotionally. Instead of doubling down on visibility, he stepped back, redirecting his focus towards smaller, more personal films like The Way, 2010, where reflection mattered more than scale. Today, Emilio Estevez is 64 years old, living a measured life away from Hollywood's noise, working selectively as a filmmaker and tending his organic vineyard. With an estimated net worth of around $18 million, he no longer chases relevance, choosing intention over momentum. His journey feels less like retreat and more like resolution. Joshua Jackson as Charlie Conway. Joshua Jackson was born on June 11, 1978, in Vancouver, Canada. At 14 years old, he played Charlie Conway, the emotional leader and moral center of the team, in The Mighty Ducks, 1992. Charlie grounded the film in vulnerability, giving young audiences someone to grow with rather than simply cheer for. Without him, the Ducks would have lacked heart. That sensitivity was rooted in his childhood. Jackson's parents divorced when he was 8, forcing him into constant relocation between Canada and the United States. The absence of his father and frequent bullying left him isolated, making acting less a dream than an escape. Early success arrived fast, but it also meant growing up while being watched. That pressure multiplied with Dawson's Creek. The series turned Jackson into a global teen icon, but once it ended, Back in 1992, The Mighty Ducks wasn't just about hockey. It was about second chances, underdogs, and finding family where you least expected it. Those faces became part of our childhood. But that was only on screen. Off screen, fame faded, marriages broke, and lives took turns no one saw coming. Join us as we uncover who they really were and honor the legacy they left behind. Emilio Estevez as Gordon Bombay. Emilio Estevez was born on May 12, 1962 in New York City and grew up in Malibu, California. At 30 years old, he played Gordon Bombay, the disgraced lawyer forced into coaching a youth hockey team in The Mighty Ducks, 1992. The character gave the film emotional weight, turning a children's sports story into one about regret and second chances. Bombay wasn't just leading the Ducks, he carried the soul of the franchise. That emotional restraint mirrored Emilio's own upbringing. Growing up as the son of Martin Sheen and the brother of Charlie Sheen meant living under constant comparison rather than comfort. Seeing his father battle alcoholism and instability created quiet tension at home, pushing Emilio to seek independence early. As he rose through films like The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, he deliberately kept the Estevez name, a choice that made every career step feel earned rather than inherited. That same independence, that toughness on screen contrasted with a childhood shaped by pressure and instability. Raised in a Hollywood-adjacent family with actor parents, Eldon entered the industry almost immediately, beginning commercial work as a toddler. When his parents divorced, financial strain followed, and acting became less of a choice than a responsibility. By the time he reached adolescence, film sets had replaced a normal childhood, even as roles in projects like Turner and Hooch and Elvis and Me kept the family afloat. As he grew older, that early momentum became harder to sustain. After the Ducks trilogy ended, Henson found himself drifting into supporting roles, never fully escaping the label of former child actor. He stepped away at times to attend college, then returned in smaller films such as The Butterfly Effect, while absorbing the quiet frustration of missed opportunities. His career regained stability years later when he was cast as Foggy Nelson in Daredevil, a role that finally allowed him to mature on screen. That period also overlapped with major changes in his personal life. In 2014, Eldon married Kira Sternbach, and they later welcomed a son. Parenthood brought grounding, but also new strain, as balancing long television schedules with family life proved difficult. The marriage ended in divorce in 2017, leaving him to recalibrate his priorities away from the spotlight. By 2026, Eldon Henson is 49 years old, continuing to work steadily while keeping a deliberately low public profile. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, built largely from the Ducks legacy and his long-running Marvel work, his career has settled into durability rather than dominance. Marguerite Moreau as Connie Moreau. Marguerite Moreau was born on April 25, 1977, in Riverside, California. At 15 years old, she played Connie Moreau, the fiercely determined and technically gifted skater, in The Mighty Ducks. Connie added speed, intelligence, and grit to the team, subtly redefining the role of female athletes in family sports films. Her character made the Ducks feel balanced, not just powerful. That early responsibility arrived before adulthood. Marguerite entered acting in her early teens, juggling auditions with schoolwork and long shooting days. The strain quietly isolated her from peers, forcing her to grow up faster than most. Even as she moved into television with shows like Blossom, the pressure to perform never fully eased. Her career expanded but rarely stabilized. Films such as Wet Hot American Summer and Queen of the Damned raised her profile, yet Hollywood's narrow casting for women repeatedly pushed her into secondary roles. She stepped back at times to attend university, later returning to independent film and television, where the pace was slower but the control greater. Away from the screen, Marguerite built a steadier personal life. She married actor Christopher Redman in 2010, and together they welcomed a son in 2015. While the marriage remained stable, the demands of production schedules and motherhood required constant adjustment. Unlike many former child actors, she chose consistency over visibility. Today, Marguerite Moreau is 49 years old, continuing to work selectively in television and independent projects. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her career reflects longevity rather than spectacle. From teenage athlete on ice to resilient character actress, her path shows how endurance can matter more than headlines. Vincent LaRusso as Adam Banks. Vincent LaRusso was born on May 16, 1978, in Livingston, New Jersey. At 14 years old, he played Adam Banks, the gifted but conflicted prodigy, in The Mighty Ducks. Adam Banks brought class, skill, and internal conflict to the team, representing the pressure of expectations rather than raw rebellion. His presence elevated the story beyond underdogs into a battle of identity. That tension reflected Vincent's own early life. Raised in an Italian-American family in New Jersey, he left home young to pursue acting, trading stability for uncertainty. The move to Hollywood brought financial strain and emotional distance from his family, forcing him to mature quickly. Even while finding success in the Mighty Ducks trilogy, the experience came with isolation rather than comfort. As the franchise ended, his path quietly shifted. Instead of fighting to remain in Hollywood, Vincent chose education, earning a business degree and stepping away from acting momentum. Attempts to return to the screen brought only limited opportunities, reinforcing the reality that childhood success does not guarantee longevity. A brief return as Adam Banks in The Mighty Ducks. Game Changers felt more like closure than a comeback. His personal life followed a similarly understated course. Vincent married Kate Everard in 2015, seeking stability outside the entertainment world. The marriage ended in divorce in 2018, leaving him to rebuild quietly, far from public scrutiny. Unlike many former child actors, his struggles unfolded without scandal, just gradual distance from the spotlight. Now, Vincent LaRusso is 48 years old, living in New York City and working in the hospitality business. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, largely tied to his early acting years and later business work, his story is one of conscious retreat rather than collapse. Adam Banks once chose the Ducks over privilege, and Vincent ultimately chose real life over fame. Shaun Weiss as Greg Goldberg. Shaun Weiss was born on August 27, 1978 in Montvale, New Jersey. At 14 years old, he played Greg Goldberg, the loud, fearless goaltender, in The Mighty Ducks. Goldberg added humor and heart to the team, becoming one of the franchise's most recognizable faces. His confidence masked vulnerability, a contrast that made him unforgettable. That contrast followed Shaun off-screen. Raised in New Jersey, he entered acting young and tasted fame before adolescence ended. The attention arrived faster than emotional stability, and family pressures compounded the imbalance. Without structure, the momentum that fueled his early success slowly turned into exposure he wasn't prepared to manage. After The Mighty Ducks and Heavyweights, work became sporadic. Roles in projects like Freaks and Geeks showed promise, but addiction began to dominate his life. Methamphetamine abuse spiraled into repeated arrests between 2017 and 2020, costing him his health, finances, and freedom. By the lowest point, he had lost his teeth, his career, and nearly his life. Recovery marked a painful turning point. After multiple incarcerations and rehab attempts, Shaun completed drug court in 2022 and celebrated 2 years of sobriety. Dental reconstruction restored his appearance, but rebuilding trust and self-worth took longer. He began working as a recovery coach, using his past as a warning rather than a secret. By 2026, Shaun Weiss is 48 years old, sober, and living a quieter life centered on recovery work and limited creative projects. With an estimated net worth of around $60,000, his wealth no longer defines success. Survival does. From a beloved goalie to a cautionary tale, and finally to a man helping others stay alive, his story remains the darkest and most human of the Ducks. Matt Doherty as Les Averman. Matthew Doherty was born on June 22, 1978, in Harvey, Illinois. At 14 years old, he played Les Averman, the anxious, rule-obsessed voice of reason, in The Mighty Ducks. Les added nervous energy and comic contrast to the team, grounding the chaos with intellect rather than muscle. His presence made the Ducks feel human, not heroic. That sensibility came from a childhood shaped by discipline rather than comfort. Growing up in the Chicago suburbs, Matt balanced school with early acting work, often shuttling between classrooms and film sets. The pressure to keep up academically while performing professionally created constant tension, forcing maturity long before adulthood. Even during the success of the Mighty Ducks, normal teenage life remained out of reach. As he aged out of the franchise, his career quietly shifted. Roles became smaller, and Hollywood's interest in supporting child actors faded quickly. Instead of chasing diminishing opportunities, Matt chose education, earning a theater degree from Northwestern University. Appearances in projects like So I Married an Axe Murderer stood out, but writing slowly replaced acting as his creative center. That transition reshaped his personal life as well. Away from constant auditions, he built a private family life, married, and became a father. Stability replaced visibility, and creative fulfillment came through mentoring, screenwriting, and working with artists outside the spotlight. Today, Matt Doherty is 48 years old, living largely outside mainstream entertainment while continuing to write and occasionally act. With an estimated net worth of around $300,000, his wealth lies more in longevity than fame. Garrett Ratliff Henson as Guy Germain. Garrett Ratliff Henson was born on January 5, 1980 in Burbank, California. At 12 years old, he played Guy Germain, the cocky, fast-talking agitator in the Mighty Ducks. Guy injected swagger and provocation into the team, pushing others forward through friction. His edge kept the Ducks from becoming sentimental. That sharpness was forged early. Growing up in a creative household alongside his older brother Eldon, Garrett felt pressure to prove himself quickly. Hockey scenes came with real physical strain, and the expectations placed on young actors left little room for error. Even success carried the weight of comparison. After the Ducks trilogy, opportunities narrowed. Roles in films like Casper and Good Burger followed, but momentum slowed as he chose education over constant auditions. Stepping away from acting meant confronting the fear of being forgotten, yet it also allowed him to redefine success on his own terms. That choice brought personal stability. Garrett married Lori Savage in 2007, later becoming a father, and shifted his focus toward filmmaking behind the camera. Graduate studies deepened his relationship with storytelling, trading childhood visibility for adult control. His life moved forward without headlines, but not without purpose. Today, Garrett Ratliff Henson is 46 years old, working in film and television production while raising his family in New York. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his career reflects reinvention rather than retreat. Aaron Schwartz as Dave Karp. Aaron Schwartz was born on January 4, 1981 in New York City. At 11 years old, he played Dave Karp, the outspoken, hot-headed enforcer of the Ducks, in The Mighty Ducks, 1992. Dave added friction and attitude to the team, often pushing conflicts to the surface. His presence made the Ducks feel unruly, imperfect, and real. That edge followed Aaron from childhood. Growing up in New York, he entered acting early, balancing auditions with school while constantly moving between sets and classrooms. The instability created academic pressure and social distance from peers. Even success came with exhaustion, as work replaced the normal rhythms of childhood. As he grew older, his body became part of the narrative. After The Mighty Ducks, Aaron gained widespread attention for Heavyweights, 1995, where his weight defined the role and, unintentionally, his public image. Typecasting followed, and opportunities narrowed. Years later, he lost over 100 pounds, a transformation that altered how the industry, and he himself, saw his place within it. That shift coincided with changes in his personal life. Aaron married in 2006 and became a father, grounding himself outside Hollywood's instability. Acting became more selective, with appearances in television and later work behind the camera. Producing offered control that acting never fully did. By 2026, Aaron Schwartz is 45 years old, working steadily as an actor and producer through his company, Brand New Pictures. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, built from early Disney success and later independent work, his career reflects adaptation rather than disappearance. Dave Karp once fought for space on the ice. Aaron learned to claim it off-screen. Heidi Kling as Casey Conway. Heidi Kling was born in 1962 in the United States. At 30 years old, she played Casey Conway, the steady, supportive mother anchoring the Ducks' emotional world in The Mighty Ducks, 1992. Casey provided warmth and balance, grounding the story whenever ambition threatened to overtake empathy. Her role gave the film its quiet center. Unlike many cast members, Heidi entered acting later in life. That late start brought financial uncertainty and limited opportunities, forcing her to navigate an industry already crowded with younger faces. Even after appearing in films like D3, The Mighty Ducks, and Outbreak, momentum remained difficult to sustain. As roles became sporadic, reality set in. Hollywood offered fewer chances, and the strain of instability grew heavier than the work itself. Instead of clinging to diminishing visibility, Heidi began looking beyond acting for long-term purpose. The shift was practical, not dramatic. That transition aligned with stability at home. Heidi married David Barone in 1994, and together they raised a child while she gradually stepped away from the screen. Her focus moved toward therapeutic work, choosing service and consistency over creative uncertainty. Fame quietly gave way to fulfillment. Today, Heidi Kling is 64 years old, living a private life centered on family and healing professions. With an estimated net worth of around $200,000, her story is not one of loss, but of redirection. Casey Conway once held a team together. Heidi ultimately chose to do the same in her own life. Joss Ackland as Hans. Joss Ackland was born on February 29, 1928 in London, England. At 64 years old, he played Hans, the quiet, wounded former coach and moral compass, in The Mighty Ducks. Hans gave the story its soul, embodying loss, forgiveness, and the weight of unfinished lives. His presence slowed the film down, allowing grief and wisdom to exist beside comedy. That gravity came from lived experience. Ackland grew up in extreme poverty in wartime London, surrounded by bombings, hunger, and instability. Leaving school at 15, he entered acting not as ambition but as survival. Trained at the Central School of Speech and Drama, he learned early that discipline and endurance mattered more than recognition. His career unfolded steadily rather than spectacularly. Over decades, Ackland appeared in more than 130 roles, often as authority figures burdened by moral ambiguity, in films like White Mischief and The Hunt for Red October. Though frequently cast in supporting roles, he earned deep respect, including a BAFTA nomination, by bringing humanity to characters that might otherwise have been forgettable. His personal life carried equal weight. Ackland married actress Rosemary Kirkcaldy in 1951, and they remained together for 51 years, raising 7 children. Tragedy struck repeatedly. A house fire left Rosemary severely injured. Their eldest son died of a heroin overdose, and Rosemary herself passed away from motor neurone disease in 2002. These losses quietly shaped Ackland's later performances, including Hans. Finally, Joss Ackland died peacefully at home in Clovelly, Devon, on November 19, 2023, at 95 years old. By the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $5 million, built over a lifetime of work rather than stardom. Like Hans, he left behind no speeches, only the echo of steadiness, dignity, and hard-earned grace. Lane Smith as Coach Jack Riley. Lane Smith was born on April 29, 1936, in Memphis, Tennessee. At 56 years old, he played Coach Jack Riley, the ruthless win-at-all-costs antagonist, in The Mighty Ducks. Riley gave the film its edge, personifying pressure, cruelty, and the damage ambition can inflict. Without him, the Ducks would have had no real enemy. That severity was rooted in a difficult early life. Raised with limited means, Smith served in the U.S. Army before committing fully to acting. He trained at the Actors Studio alongside Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino, absorbing a discipline forged through struggle rather than privilege. Authority came naturally to him because he understood its cost. His career peaked through intensity, not likability. Smith became known for powerful figures, politicians, executives, and morally compromised leaders. In films like Red Dawn and The Final Days, where his portrayal of Richard Nixon earned him an Emmy and Golden Globe nomination. Television fame followed with Lois and Clark, but typecasting often confined him to stern, intimidating roles. Off-screen, his life was quieter but not untouched by hardship. Smith married twice and raised children, balancing family against a demanding career. As roles slowed, illness emerged. In 2004, he was diagnosed with ALS, a devastating disease that stripped away mobility while leaving his mind intact. Work ceased as the condition progressed rapidly. Lane Smith died at home in Northridge, California on June 13, 2005, at the age of 69, from complications of ALS. At his death, his estimated net worth was around $2 million, earned through decades of stage, film, and television work. Coach Riley ruled through fear, but Lane Smith is remembered for strength in decline, facing his final battle with quiet resolve. Joseph Summer as Gerald Ducksworth. Joseph Summer was born on June 26, 1934, in Greifswald, Germany. At 58 years old, he played Gerald Ducksworth, the benevolent benefactor and moral backbone, in The Mighty Ducks. Ducksworth supplied the story with conscience and generosity, funding the team while trusting growth over trophies. His calm authority framed the film's idea of responsibility. That steadiness was forged early. Summer fled Nazi-era Europe with his family as a child, resettling in the United States amid language barriers and dislocation. Adaptation became a skill before acting did. Training in classical theater followed, shaped by discipline rather than glamour and reinforced by service in the U.S. Army. His career favored depth over spotlight. Summer worked relentlessly on stage and screen, appearing in Dirty Harry, Witness, and The Sum of All Fears, often as principled men carrying quiet burdens. Supporting roles brought pressure without celebrity, yet earned respect. Obie Awards, a Drama Desk nomination, and decades of steady work testified to craft over fame. At home, continuity mattered. He married Nina Seeley in 1984, built a long partnership, and raised a family away from spectacle. As years advanced, health slowed him. Finally, he died on November 19, 2023, at 95 years old, at home in Clovelly, Devon. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was about $1.5 million, accumulated through longevity rather than stardom. Like Ducksworth, he left a legacy defined by steadiness, not noise. Brandon Quintin Adams as Jesse Hall. Brandon Quintin Adams was born on August 22, 1979, in Topeka, Kansas. At 13 years old, he played Jesse Hall, the fiery street-smart winger, in The Mighty Ducks. Jesse injected urgency and edge, reminding the team that talent without grit goes nowhere. His speed kept the Ducks honest. That intensity came from necessity. Raised with limited means, Adams entered acting early to help support his family. Work arrived fast, television, music videos, and film, but stability lagged behind. Childhood moved at a professional pace, demanding focus before freedom. Momentum followed, then thinned. Standout roles in Moonwalker and The Sandlot built recognition, and The People Under the Stairs proved range, yet offers narrowed as adolescence passed. The industry's attention shifted, pushing Adams to reassess what longevity meant. The pivot led inward. He stepped back from acting to pursue music and personal growth, then returned selectively as a writer-performer, choosing projects with emotional weight over visibility. Today, Brandon Quinton Adams is 47 years old, working across acting, writing, and independent production. With an estimated net worth around $300,000, his measure of success has changed. Jesse Hall once chased the puck relentlessly. Adams now chases meaning on his own terms. Time gave them fame, then took them in very different directions. Some found peace, some faced loss, and others quietly stepped away from the spotlight. So which Mighty Duck story moved you the most, and which one surprised you? If you enjoyed this journey, like the video, share it with a fellow Ducks fan, and subscribe for more then and now stories.